Good morning, everyone. Good morning, parents, and good morning, teachers. I want to congratulate everyone here this morning for being able to attend. This is a very important meeting. And when I think about this meeting, I think collaboration, I think cooperation. Now the truth is, every society stands on three legs. Every society, three major legs. The family system, the educational system, then the church system, religious system. Now, of these three legs, family is the biggest. Some children don't go to school, they are homeschooled, you know, right? Some children don't go to school. Some of our parents wrote GC from home. I don't know if that day I'm sure you can, they wrote GC from home in those years. And also in that home, we can be taught the word of God. Now, that doesn't stop us from. But what I'm trying to say is that of these three legs, family is the greatest. And because of this meeting, I will explain how family is. Because the truth is, if the family misses it, the family is the foundation. If we miss it at the family level, there's little that the school and the church can do. There's little. You know, many times when we talk about leadership, we're so quick to condemn political leaders and people in authority. But the truth is, leadership actually starts from home. It starts from home. 60% of leadership starts from home. And if that 60% is compromised, then the society is set on the course of instability. Many years back, when charity used to start at home, we agreed with that the society was saner. Right? Yes. When we were growing up, there were just like 3 churches in my village, big place. But you could forget something and you come back and meet it. Because values were taught at home. Many of the disciplines I have today, I didn't learn from school, I didn't learn from church. I learned them from home. So when I see a collaboration between the school and the family, the devil is in trouble. And I trust God that this initiative, this parent-teachers meeting, we organize, interact with parents, will go a long way in establishing our children to become the change agents we desire to see in the mighty name of Jesus. And this morning, the topic is bridging generational gap. Bridging generational gap. And that's a reality that many of us are familiar with. But the truth is, there's always a generational gap between parents and children. You can't be in the same generation with your children as a parent. You can't. Children of these days are wearing trousers that stop here, right? Young people of these days. We can't wear that as parents. It's not our style. When I see people wear this tie that looks like rope, there's this tiny tie, young people. I don't have it. All my ties are big. Now, there will always be, I'm not condemning that tie. I'm just saying there's always a generational gap between parents and their children. There's always a generational gap. This generational gap has existed for years. But that generational gap is not meant to be a disadvantage. Because today, I see many parents raising children from a defensive standpoint. There's defensive parenting, there's offensive parenting. You know, when you're on the defensive, you know, have you ever worked with somebody before who you can't talk to? Somebody that you are scared of talking to the person. Have you been in that situation before? Some people come to your home on a visit. They literally take over the environment of your home. They take over the remote control. Have you seen it before? And you say, in this house we drink. You say, no, why do you drink tea? Eat yam. Before you know it, you start changing. That there are people who are raising their children from that children of these days. And a lot of parents are actually scared of addressing their children. And that should not be. Because children need guidance. Now, you see, despite the generational gap between parents and children, God has made a provision. There's something He has put inside us as parents to help us reach out to those children and lead them aright. Now, you know what? The dream of a boy is a father's reality. What our children call dream by vision is our reality. Now, I was talking to one man sometime ago. He said when he was young, he used to say, when I grow up, I'll be eating rice every day. That was his when I grew up. But we now are telling us not to eat too much rice. Doctor, telling us not to. So the dream of a boy. I remember when I was growing up, when people come to visit us and they buy bread and things, I would be like, I'm looking forward to a time I will also be a man, and when I'm going to visit people, I'll buy bread and and when I come home, say, hey, young man, come. Now I'm in that position. Are you following? So the dream of a boy, of our children, is the reality of the parents. And if you don't guide them aright, they will arrive at the future and they will be able to know the road to travel. They will know what to do. So as parents, we have a responsibility to our children. And my dad told me a story many years ago. My dad is 87. He was a school teacher. He retired like 30 years ago. 1996. So he was in primary school in 1950, those years. In those days, parents were illiterate. You know that. It's not like now that many parents are educated. In those days, parents were illiterate. And he told a story about one of his schoolmates that the boy wasn't good academically. So every evening, when he comes back from school, his illiterate mother, she knew only one thing, that students are meant to read in the evenings, right? So every evening, she'll tell her son, go and read your book. But because the boy wasn't serious at school, he would take his reader. I don't know if students see his reader for English now. He would take his reader, and the only thing he would say is, good morning, children. How are you and how are you? That's the only thing he could remember from school. Tomorrow again, the next day, what I was saying, go and read your book. You carry the same reader. Good morning, children. How are you and how are you? That was what he was doing every day. And he got to a point, that illiterate woman now discovered that this boy is always saying the same thing every day. So one day again, she told him, go and take your books. And he came again. Good morning, children. How are you? And how? I was like, are you telling me that as big as this book is, this is the only thing written inside it? Now, what does that show us? She wasn't educated, but she was present. And because she was present, she knew when her child was being mischievous. If she was educated and she wasn't present, she wouldn't even know that the child was being mischievous. There's a generational gap, but God has put in parents that ability to control, to coordinate, and to arrange the destinies and the characters of their children. So as parents, let us understand that our children are looking up to us. They need us. And truly, when you are close to children, I tell you what, 50% of your work as a parent is done. When we look at how to bridge that gap, I'll talk about that. So there's always a generational gap between parents and children. When we were in school in the 80s, secondary school, your father would tell you to, your mother would tell you, go and read, go and read. In those days, we used to wrap books. You buy a book, you wrap it. Go and read. Your mother doesn't know how to read. You'll be reading James Hadley Chase. You think you are reading literature. Right? No, that's generation. There's also generational gap. But as you are, some people will be reading Mist and Boom. Your mother will see you are reading. But don't fail, come this house. If you like, read what you like. But don't fail, come to this house with a poor results. There was that. There was fear. There was a generational gap, but we knew that there were limits that you could not cross. And in the same way, in today's world, there's a generational gap between parents and children. But that generational gap is not meant to scare us as parents. Because God has put in us, right? Like that illiterate woman in 1950 who could tell that the child was not doing right. God has put that ability in every parent. Now, what is a generational gap? What we hear generation? What does it mean? He said it's the difference in opinion. Generational gap is the difference in opinions, right? Values, attitude. The difference in opinions, values, attitudes, right? And behaviors between one generation and another. I'll read it again. What is generational gap? He said it is the difference in opinion, right? Children of these days, the way they see things different from the way parents see things. It's the difference in opinions, the difference in values. The difference in values, character, attitudes, difference in attitudes, and behavior between one generation and another. And I want to mention that difference for this generation is high. It's high. All of a sudden now we are seeing that money is becoming like the ultimate for many young people, irrespective of how that money is made. For some, success, we used to say that the end justifies the means. But the end does not always justify the means. If the means is not right, then the end is faulty. And sometimes also our children have been taught. Sometimes I listen to people, they say, don't work for anybody, you can make money. Yes, but guess what? The discipline that work gives people is eroded. It's eroded. Now, if we go and do business, I'm not against business. I'm self-employed, I don't. But some people must work. We cannot all go into business. If we all go into business, we work for the other person. And you know what I discovered about work? There's a discipline that work puts inside people. It's not all about money. There's a discipline that work puts inside people. But we have things like sack your own boss, Yeah, there are some bosses, but not every boss that you sack. So our children live in a generation. Look at dressing patterns. Look at the dress patterns among today's youths. Look at their language. So as parents, we cannot, for the first time, we see men who are plaiting hair. It never happened. And it's gaining momentum. It's entering the system. Values are eroded at a very fast pace. And one of the reasons is because parents have not been be there to guide their children aright. You know, I keep telling people, you see these Gen Z people, Gen Z is this, Gen Z is that. The Gen Z people are a generation that were not parented well. Children are like water. In physics, they say water assumes the shape of the container you put it, right? If you put water in a round bowl, the shape of the water becomes round. If you put water in a cylindrical bowl, the shape of the water becomes what? Cylindrical. But you know, sometimes we are scared. If you tell them, what will they do? They won't listen. They will listen. I recall that last year, if you remember last year, I told you something that in our house, in our home, at the point, we decided to stop watching cable television. You remember, right? When I came here last year, we had done it for 6 months. By the grace of God, for 1.5 years, we have not watched cable television. It's only NTA we watch. Yes, for reasons, you know, that for reasons some of you will do. Now, I'm not telling you to go and do it too, because you don't just import things. There was a process that led to it. But can you believe that there are young people in this generation who will not watch cable television? That not, my children know who cast news on Wednesday, on Tuesday, on Monday. They know the programs on NTA. Now, why? It was a process that led there. You understand? I discovered that in cable television, if women are not kissing, you know that any small program they are kissing. And I said, okay, let's start watching Chinese movie. They don't kiss. That one is violence, right? Then after China, I say no, Indians don't fight. They don't kiss. You know Indian programs. But Indian programs have made family institutions look like there's always divorce. Divorce is a very regular thing. Somebody told me one day, you are running from violence, you go immorality. From immorality, you are going to. Then we reached this situation saying, let's no more cable television. Initially it was difficult, but today, that's what we are doing. You can also put structures in place in your family that will guide your children. But these structures you need to put in place, please, should not be abrupt. You understand? Don't go home today now and say, from today, no cable television. I didn't send anybody to go and do that because the backlash will be such that you cannot. It took us time. So what am I saying? We need to identify areas where we need control and work the process to get there. Generational gap. So there's one generational gap. And it also refers to a disconnect or lack of understanding. Generational gap. A disconnect, disconnection or lack of understanding between young people and their elders. It refers to a disconnect, right? Or lack of understanding between young people and who? Their parents. Because of rapid social, cultural, and technological changes. There's a disconnect between many parents and their children because of rapid social, technological changes. Now, what are the causes? Number one, technology. Right? Technology. Technology is a major culprit. I remember years ago, in teaching children, I would tell them, how many of you know how to post letter? Do you even know how to post letter in the post office? You need to buy a stamp and go to one box and put. Those things are outdated. No child understands that again. You want to send a letter to a friend in Lagos, you have to write the letter, put it in an envelope, go to post office, and now, instantly, WhatsApp and SMS. Right? Things have changed. And because of the times we lived in, we learned to wait. We learned to wait. But this generation has not learned to wait. Those things were in school, university. I recall, when your money is exhausted, you need more money, you have to write a letter, go to the post office, post the letter. That letter will take 3 weeks and get to where your father stays. In 1 week, the person that goes to collect letter from the post office may not go to the post office. You know, right? So your letter gets home, your father sees your letter of request after 1 month. Now the money is not there. It's not like your child will say you just transfer immediately. No, he has to wait for salary or look for how to get the money. Then go and buy bank draft or money orders. Before he sends back to it, another 3 weeks, 7 weeks gone. Now in those 7 weeks, you learn to wait. You learn to wait. But this generation is doing like that, right? You just your child saying money now from daddy, I need money. How much? 50K. Instantly, the money drops. So this generation has not learned to wait because of technology. Another cause is economic reasons. Economic reasons. Yeah, economic reasons. People are now doing more jobs, getting more realized a bit is different from how it used to be. In those days, if your father is a farmer, he's a farmer. But today people can multitask, do different things, and make money. You understand? The values we learned then also affected the kind of lives we live. So economic reasons are there. Cultural reasons. Culture changed. Culture has changed. And this is the reality our children live in. That's why as parents we must understand the reality of our children and work with them according to that reality. And work with them according to that reality. He said in families, generational gaps occur because of pop culture, language, dressing, and lifestyle changes. Lifestyle choices. You're talking to a young person and he's talking to you. And you say, Omo, have you, a child of somebody of 22, 23 is talking to you, and Agbalagba, 50, 55. He said, as someone say, Omo, hey, what we're going on? Is it your father that is Omo? It's and those are languages, but the truth is, you can naturally modulate those things. You can't modulate them as a parent. So it's a language, dressing, and lifestyle changes. Now, I don't want us to. Now, how do we bridge the gap? How do we bridge the gap? Number one, how do we bridge the gap? Number one, parents must first understand that our children are our ambassadors. Right? Our children are our ambassadors. When our children go out, whatever they do has a telling effect on the reputation of your family. Ambassadors. When Moses was born at the wrong time. Moses was born at a very wrong time. Moses was born at a time when it was an offense for a Jewish woman to give birth to a son. It was the wrong time. Just like some people today feel we are living in wrong times. Values are eroding. But Moses was born at the wrong time. But the Bible says that the parents saw that he was a proper child. Right? The parents saw that Moses was a proper child. And they told themselves, this child will not die. So the first issue is, what are you seeing in that child? What do you see in your children? Do you see your children as proper children? Moses was a proper child. And that understanding alone gave the parents the needed tonic and strength to raise Moses when they had a little chance to. One man said, the postman, he said, children are messengers who send into a future we will not be in. He said, our children, they are messengers. We are sending into a future that we will not be present in. And that's the truth. Our children are messengers who send into a future that we will not be in. And the question is, what kind of messages are we sending into the future? Sometimes I ask parents, if your son becomes the president of Nigeria, will he be better than will he be better than what we currently complain about? You know, it's easy to complain, this person is this, that person is not that. Based on the way we are raising our children, when our children eventually get to that position, we will do better. And number 2 question, ask parents, if your child behaves exactly like you, would you be proud of your child? Yes, would you be proud of your child? If your child behaves exactly like you, as a father, as a mother, would you be proud? Would you be, wow, that's my son? You know, I was talking with somebody some years ago in one school. They said the child misbehaved, and they called the father. By the time the father finished, they said, this boy is a good boy. Because the father's display dwarfed what the boy did. They said, this boy even tried though. It wasn't good behavior, it was bad behavior. But when the father came and did his own, they said, this boy is even trying, it's even good, sir. Because if this is the kind of home he comes from and he still did this, no, the guy is trying. You know? And that's how parental upbringing affects people. Children are messengers we send into a future we will not feature in. Right? Then how do you bridge the gap? I talked about understanding. How do you see your children? How do you bridge the gap? Number 1, have values yourself as parents. Have values. Have values. What are your own values as a parent? What are your values? What are our values as parents? You know, in school, a child comes to school and the teacher teaches in social studies that when you are driving, if you see red light, you say stop. Traffic, right? You say red light, you stop. The teacher teaches the child that. But the father is taking the child to school and he sees red light, and he passes. What do you think will happen to that child? You have confused the logic of that child. Right? You have confused the logic of that child.
So, what are your values? What are my values my values as a parent? I read the story of a former army chief many years back. And you know, in those days of military rule, at 30-something, those guys became governors, right? So he was a sole administrator, he was a military administrator of a state. And he said one day his father called him and said, my son, you are now growing, you are a big man. He said, but there's one thing I beg you. He said, when you are coming back home after your retirement, bring back my name. Don't bring back money, bring back my name. And the question is, a father who has not built a name has no right to tell a child to bring back his name. Which name? You know what you gave me, I will bring back. So the issue is, have we built a name or a reputation that we can tell our children to uphold? Have we built a name? Have you built a name? Have I built a name? If you read the story of the prodigal son, of course, amazing, smart young boy and stubborn boy, who ran ahead of his time. But when the chips were down, what did the prodigal son remember? He remembered the fact that his father was kind even to his servants. Right? Yes. What did he remember? He said, even servants in my father's house, they have enough to eat. The way some servants are treated today, bros. That's why he was even willing to come back and be a servant. I think servants in my father's house, they have food to eat. What if the father was wicked to servants? That prodigal son may never have returned. So, what are our values as parents? Number 1, have a set of values. Every home needs values. Sometimes I'm watching something with my children. I say, Daddy, look at that person. That man is this. He's a big person, is this. And his hair is plaited. Bros, that's not our values. And we don't do that here. We don't do that. We have a set of values. Do you understand? You have a set of values. So have a value. Then number 2, communicate those values. Communicate values. The values we communicate to our children will stick. Yes. How do we bridge the gap? Communicate your values. Communicate them. Communicate your values. First of all, have a set of values. What are your values? Number 2, communicate. When we were growing up, our dad told us a story. He used to tell us this. Now, when we grew up, we used to drink Coke only on Christmas Day. Yes, Christmas Day. 1977, 78, 79. Christmas Day once in a year. But dad used to tell us that when you go anywhere and you are given a drink, that once you open the drink, right, don't walk away from the drink. He said, once you open your drink, I'll tell you why I was telling you we drink Coke once a year, because how can I be drinking Coke once in a year and you give me that Coke and I'll leave that Coke for any reason? No, now does it apply? What you eat take once in a year, then you will now open and somebody now says, come, I'll carry my bottle now. Do you understand? So he said, once you are given a drink, don't leave your drink unattended. And he will tell us, once you open it, if somebody says, Gideon, come quickly, he said, make sure you carry that drink with you. He said, if you leave that drink, don't go back to it. Do you know that today, of course, most of my engagements are Christian, now my association, but even when I go to church or wherever, once I open my drink, I'm not leaving my drink unattended. I'm not saying anybody wants to poison me, but something has been put inside me that says, Gideon, don't leave your drink unattended. Even if it's a committee of bishops I'm eating with, don't leave your drink. It doesn't matter. Communicate your values. Yes, communicate your values. Thank you. Communicate your values. And there are many other values. There are many other values. There are many other values. Hard work, diligence. And many times when you interact with children, you begin to see the things you need to teach. When children are small, they all like cartoons, right? Cartoon. But as they get to 3, 4, the boy will like Paw Patrol. Right? The boy will no longer, then the girls will like Upsy Daisy. Then you begin to see differences in personality. That's the time to know. When my children were growing up, they got to an age, one always wants to hold the remote. Then the one said, I said, no, you can't always be holding the remote. Do you understand? You can't always be holding the remote. You must give you that say, no. Sometimes you need to also insist that you hold the remote. Life is a balance. Communicate values. Teach them. Number 2, model it. Model what you want them to see. Model it. Model it. Yes. Model the right limits. Experience has shown that what we do with our spouses as parents is a family pattern our children will adopt. If you're a man who shouts, disrespect your wife, your son most likely will end up like that, and your daughter will be attracted to a man who disrespects women. Yes. Because that's the familiar thing she knows. What she has been taught is that men disrespect women. So tomorrow, even when she sees a gentle guy, this one not getting she's looking for the one that disrespects women. One of the most wicked women in scriptures was Jezebel. You know Jezebel now? You know Jezebel had a daughter called Athaliah. Maybe she even did worse than Jezebel, I don't know. Athaliah killed all her grandchildren because she wanted to be king. Family traits. What are you modeling? God called David. We know David, great man. But David was a great man. But guess what? In Deuteronomy 17, God said one of the qualifications for kings in Israel was that they should not multiply wives. You remember? Deuteronomy 17. David did wives. And when Solomon came, he tripled that. And you know what? David taught Solomon. Oh, Solomon is the only son of David that David taught. If you read Proverbs 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, right? It was Solomon retelling the story of what his father taught him. But David had left a model. You multiply wives. David didn't multiply horses. He didn't multiply.
Keep them serious. So teach your children. Teach them. That when you're around them, teach and keep teaching. Now, what do you teach? You talk about values. Teach them for the Lord. Teach them for the Lord. The story of the Rechabites, as the uncle scripture. You know, the Rechabites, they resemble the late Nazarites in the Bible. An amazing set was a family. Right? He said for 200 years, they had obeyed the laws of their ancestors. Imagine, for 200 years, what a father taught 200 years before was passed down through generations. 200 years, generations, now get changed. When you teach your children, you are teaching your children's children. That's how. Yeah. The same thing I told you about not being your children and take them. I've taught my children. Right? And they're doing it. And I'm sure they will teach their children. I'll tell you another thing. My father taught me that. 1980, July 1980, right? I was in primary 4, I was in primary 5. 1980. And I used to read colorful books, not many Bible stories. I used to read good, then they would do television, very few television. So that was my entertainment. By the time I was resuming school in September for primary 5, I had finished almost the whole of that, my book of Bible story. My book of Bible story had the major stories in the Bible. Guess what happened to me? It was as if the whole Bible was tied in a capsule at the age of 9 and dropped in my spirit. I didn't know. As I got older, it's becoming more and more, the effect of that experience is increasing. Guess what? When I started having children, I also want to read the book of Bible stories. Now, what did I do? I didn't just give them to read. I will not choose what to read story 32. I'll read story 32 and explain to them. Right? When we finished reading the book of Bible stories, we started reading the Bible. When you teach your children, you are teaching your children's children. And I'm certain that when my children have their own children, they will not forget the things that I am teaching them. So please, let's teach our children. So the Rechabites, they held fast to the instructions of their fathers. And it's not only why their father told them not to drink gold. He said they were supposed to be nomads. Right? He said they were a tightly knit group of descendants of the Canaanites. They lived as nomads. Right? No nomads now. They rejected all forms of agrarian and urban life. All that their father taught them. And they refused to drink wine or strong drink. And will not cultivate vineyards. We have farms. Nor plant any other crops. Now, when I was reading this, you know what this is? The story says that in those days, all those things their father told them not to do were the things that unbelievers used to do. You know, like now, you tell your child, when people go to a particular place A, people smoke, right? You don't tell your child not to go there, you tell your child don't smoke. So the child knows that I shouldn't go there because that's what happens there. That's what the Rechabites did. And it was so serious that many years after, Jeremiah, you know, Prophet Jeremiah, one of the greatest prophets in the Bible, called these people, and they came to the temple and they set wine before the children of the Rechabites. And what did people say? They said, our father told us we should not taste wine. And God used their story as an object lesson for the Israelites. What are we as parents teaching our children today that God can if God looks at our homes, right, He can see and use as an object lesson to teach other people about faithfulness. So, in summary, number one, how do you bridge this gap? Understand, right? Understand the generation they live in. Understand your children. He said, so that I will go to the proper time. You see your children as proper children. Number two, he said, model. If my child behaves like me, will I be proud of that? Will I be proud of that child? And that's good. If your child behaves like you, will you be proud of that child? Then teach. Use every situation, circumstance to teach. You are going to school today, you are going to school wrong, you see something, teach. You are watching a TV program together, you see something, teach. You are eating together, you see something, teach. Praise the Lord. And lastly, as fathers, as parents, please let's take time for our children. You know, we hear that the economy is hard, so we need to work. Yes, we need to work, but our children need other food. Our children need us. They need us. There are things a father will teach a child that no other person can teach a child. Many things. How many hours do children spend in school? School is even better than church. You know, right? You go to church on a Sunday, children are taught for only 30, 45 minutes. But at least in school, they are in school for 6 hours. And teachers have greater influence than pastors. I guess some people, they say just people that teach Christian religious knowledge, they have more influence on children than pastors. You know why? They are forced to read Christian religious knowledge because they have to pass it. In church, don't write it exam. Maybe your church, you are not that something, say you are not doing church at church, you don't write it, the two of us. And there's something you can do about it. But in school, it was right. But a parent who wants to make a change to bridge that gap, you are present, right? Children can identify it. And last as I close, have you noticed that teachers are closer to children than parents? Children are closer to their parents. Have you noticed? Because of my work many years, I've seen some parents who say, Gideon, this is my child, is not behaving. I know you are close to them. Let me talk to them. But what they forget is that relationship that the teacher shares with the students, the parent can also share it with the children. When you teach your children in the place of interaction and fellowship, there's communion, communication that's used between two of them. Teacher doesn't give money for child to meet you. You don't provide money though, but there's that fellowship, that communion. So as parents, we are there to commune with our children and we are present. Then we can have that attention.